Hey everyone, it's Bigfoot here, and today's video is going to be centered around lighting up your load. So this is probably the area I get the most questions on. I know many of you have been looking for me to get my gear reviews out, and really this video I wanted to help because some of you are still in that planning stage or just finishing up the planning stage, and I really wanted to share the learnings that I had on how I could lighten my load. In addition, what are the most common mistakes that I saw from other thru hikers on the trail and where they could have saved the most weight. So starting off, the first thing that I did that was really helpful was investing in buying a nice little scale. So this one right here, it is made by Taylor. It says The Biggest Loser. I don't know that there's any rhyme or reason with the one that I bought, but this is a food scale, and I wanted to get a scale that specifically measured ounces and grams. So with thru hiking, we're not just looking at cutting pounds, but for the weight that you want to get to, and when you're doing your own shakedown, you're going to be probably dialing it in to ounces and to grams. And the only way you can know that is if you actually have a scale. So I used this scale to really measure every single piece of equipment that I had or gear. And then I just used a luggage scale when I had my entire pack, all my gear inside my pack, to basically verify what my entire pack weight was. So I used the combination of both. And I use it quite frequently. So first and foremost, you got to get that because you got to know where your weight is at. Now, when you're out purchasing your gear, the vendors, the suppliers that sell the gear will tell you what the specific weight is. And depending on what you're buying, if it's something that has different sizes, that weight is going to vary. And most of the time, the weight actually does vary. In my experiences, it's usually a little bit heavier than what the weight that they advertise on the product that you're buying. All right. So looking at base weight, my personal base weight was just over 12 pounds. If you want to see what I brought with me on the Appalachian Trail, you can check out my Ultralight gear video. I have a few videos on there, but I did a final one of the gear that I had when I took on the trail. But I will tell you that many of the hikers that I saw on the trail in Georgia in the beginning, I would say maybe 200-300 miles, were rocking pack weights somewhere between the 35 to 45 pound range, which you are through hiking the Appalachian Trail. It's a 2,200 mile footpath, and that is a lot of miles, a lot of elevation change, and you need to be comfortable. And with the weight of your pack is probably one of the biggest variables that you'll have on how many miles that you'll be able to hike, how good of health you can stay in, how to keep your knees and your ankles and your body free from injury, and how to just to be happier and enjoy backpacking, enjoy through hiking. So I feel with all the research I've done and all the shakedowns I did to my own gear, that if you have a base weight that is over 20 pounds, it's probably on the heavy side. And for those of you that haven't done a ton of research on weight and what some of some of the lingo that I'm using, like base weight, basically all of the gear that you're bringing, with the exception of what you're going to be having on for food, for water, and in the clothes that you're going to have on your body. So it's really important that you can dial in that pack weight. Now, I started off, my weight, I think, was around 22 pounds. And then I continued to dial it in, and I was able to shake down and get 10 pounds off of my base weight. I will tell you that getting below 20 pounds, there's many things that you can do with relationship to cost that you can achieve a subpar or a sub 20-pound base weight without having to spend thousands upon thousands of dollars. But again, I feel that if you're above 20 pounds, it's probably a little on the heavy side. For sure, below 25, but comfortable, I would say below 20-pound base weight. Now, things to take into consideration is water. Depending on how much water you're going to carry, that's going to add between 2 to 3 pounds of weight to your pack, to your total weight. Now, a liter of water weighs 2.6 pounds, and I would say most of the time I was probably carrying somewhere around a liter. You'll hear some people talk about carrying a half liter, some people talking about carrying a liter and a half. You know, for me, I really leaned on carrying a little bit more water because I didn't want to stop and pick up water all the time. I went through a lot of water. I sweat a lot. You know, you have to know your body. And for me, I found that in the beginning when I was stopping every 4 or 5 miles for water, because that's how often I would stop, that just threw my rhythm off. So I needed to actually make it a little bit longer to keep in that rhythm and save time. So sometimes I would carry a little bit more than a liter of water. But again, it depends on you. Food, the general rule of thumb, 2 pounds of food per day. So most of the time you're probably going to have around 3 to 5 days worth of food on you. So 6 to 10 pounds. So when you're adding that with your water, you know, you're going to look at somewhere in that 10-pound range when you're fully loaded, fully stocked. That's going to be added to your base weight. So again, when you're talking about having something, a base weight above 20 pounds, you're going to be flirting with your total pack weight being 30 pounds plus. And again, I felt that's way too heavy, especially with all the miles and the terrain that you're going to be seeing on the Appalachian Trail. Going into my next topic is really going through the areas that you can save the most weight. So the first one is, I'm going to be talking about the big three. Big three is your pack, your shelter, and your sleeping bag. So the folks that followed me, you know that I rocked the ZPACKS Arc Blast, and this pack did well for me. I'm going to do a review on it specifically, but this comes out to be 21 ounces. Cost of this is $325. I will tell you that most of the packs that you'll be buying for a Thru-Hike, you're probably going to be spending at least $250. And you know, for an extra $75 on top of that, you can get an ultralight backpack. There's obviously advantages and disadvantages of going ultralight. The advantages, obviously, the weight and being able to be comfortable with that while you're going to be walking basically across America. But disadvantages, you're going to be sacrificing some comfort in relationship to things that maybe you would like to bring that you're not bringing. So whether that's maybe camp shoes or maybe it's some extra padding on the belt or your shoulder straps. But that's going to be one thing that is going to be a disadvantage. Another is capacity. What I feel is if you have more capacity in your pack, you're just probably going to pack your pack with more crap. This is a 52 liter. You probably could have gotten by with a 45 liter, and you know, but this was middle of the road. If you're not sure, I think this is probably a good volume pack. Now, if you've already bought in your pack, I will tell you that if you have, first of all, pack weight, I said this is 21 ounces. If your pack is weighing 3 to 5 pounds, it's just too heavy. And there's no way you're ever going to be able to shake that weight off. When it rains, it's going to get even heavier because it's going to soak up some water, and that's just another thing. Now there's pack covers and things like that, but obviously the pack cover will add some weight with the Cuban fiber pack that ZPACKS offers. You do not have to have a pack liner or pack cover. I didn't have either, and I kept everything inside the dry bags, the carbon fiber bags, and there was only one time that I can recall that I had a little bit of water penetrate and get into one of my watertight bags, and that was the thing that I had on the very bottom of my pack, which I think was my clothing bag, and one of my shirts just got a little wet, like a few drops. So that was another nice thing, is I didn't have to carry the extra weight of a pack cover and a pack liner, and the carbon fiber does not soak up water and get heavy like you will have on other packs. So that's another nice thing about this pack. If your pack has lots of extra compartments, zippers, things like that, again, you probably have the wrong pack. Again, you're through hiking. Remember, you're walking across 14 different states, and not only are you walking through 14 states, but you're going through tenacious mountains, and it's going to be really important what you are, how you're carrying your weight on your back. So pack, really important, and again, one way that you can shave off just a ton of weight for relatively low cost with the pack you're going to buy anyway, and upgrading to an ultralight pack. Next thing is the shelter. So there's so many different options out here, and this is probably, from a cost standpoint, one area that you can just go out and spend tons of money on, and an area that you probably can save some but still save a lot of weight. So I went with the DUPLEX tent from ZPACKS. I love this tent. It comes in, I believe, somewhere around 23-ish ounces when I added my stakes with it. And the nice thing about this particular tent was I had the comfortability because of how spacious it was. This is really a two-person tent, so I had the ability to be able to not just be comfortable and have space in my tent, but I was able to put my pack in there, spread things out, and have a living space, because this is your house. This is what you're staying in for the next 4, 5, 6 months. Now, if you are thinking about sleeping in the shelters, I'm going to do a video about shelters down the road, but honestly, there's going to be times that you want your privacy. There's going to be people snoring. You're going to have to live with mice, all of those things, and you need to have a way to get out. And there was a few people that I did come through on the trail that did not have any sort of shelter. I think that's a big mistake. But again, I went with Ultralight tent. Now, I will tell you that many of the tents that I saw on the trail probably were somewhere in that 2 to 3 pound range. And if you don't know what you're doing, I think easily you could be somewhere in that 4-ish average pounds on your tent. But again, you can save some money by reducing a couple pounds, going with kind of a mid-tier tent. You don't have to get an ultralight tent like I have. You're going to pay for it. A tent like this runs you, $600, I think. But for half that cost, you can get down somewhere in that 2 pound range. Do your research, and you can find some for a good deal, and still be pretty happy. But this is an area that you can cut some mega weight on your base weight. A few other things just to think about when you're purchasing your tent is, how big of a space that you want. I mentioned that mine was a 2-person tent, and I will tell you, a lot of people I talked on the trail that had a 1-person tent, after a couple months, got really tired of not having the space inside their tent. Now, with that comes a disadvantage. So I had troubles at times trying to find spots to be able to pitch my tent that was big enough for the area of my tent, especially when I got into like Vermont. So, just kind of keep that in mind. It is a little more difficult sometimes in certain areas to find a spot. Most of the time, I'll tell you, 90% of the time, I had no problems. But again, just something to keep in mind. And with my tent, I did not have a ground sheet. Most tents you will have to have a ground sheet. And I never rocked one during the whole entire trail. I never had any problems with how durable the bathtub floor is on the DUPLEX tent. It was never an issue for me. So that was something also I was able to save some weight with the tent choice that I went with. When you are out and shopping for gear and you're looking at doing your personal shakedown and cutting ounces, you want to find things that have dual purpose. The more things that have dual purpose, the more weight you're going to save and the more efficient that you're going to be. So my tent, as an example, one of the reasons why I can rock a 23 ounce weight on a base weight on my tent is because it doesn't have any poles. The poles that I use are my trekking poles. So I have the dual purpose of using my trekking poles when I'm hiking, and then when I set up my shelter, that is the tent poles. So again, look for things that have dual purpose. I'll give a couple of examples more about that as we get a little bit further in the video. So let's move over to the last of the big three, which is the sleeping bag. So with the trend, yes, I went with ZPACKS. For those of you that don't know, now this is a ZPACKS quilt. It's the solo down quilt, and I went with a 40-degree quilt. Now, I will tell you that a few factors in when you're determining your sleeping bag or your quilt. Number one, the degree, how comfortable can you be in what degree temperature bag. For me, I sleep really warm, and I didn't start my Thru-Hike until middle of April or close to the end of April. So the temperatures that I hit really didn't impact me enough where I thought that I needed to get a sleeping bag that had a comfortability rating of less than 40. And I'll tell you that there was 2 nights that I was a little chilly. When there was a night that I was chilly, I just layered my clothing and slept with that. But most nights I didn't have to do that. Now there's some people out there that will have to have 10 or 20 degree sleeping bags for the entire duration of their Thru-Hike. So it really depends on you. Now, ZPACKS, they're the nice thing about their quilts, number one is you don't have a hood on it. You're going to save some weight without the hood. Now you can buy a hood that's a separate attachment to it if you'd like. What I just did is when I was cold on my upper part of my body, I would just wear my fleece hat, and I never had any issues. So you're saving some weight with that. They tailor make every single one of their quilts. So you give the specifications of how wide, how long, all of those things that go into play with actually making it, and they actually make this custom. So it's really custom to your body, to your fit, so you can be comfortable, which is again another nice thing about going with ZPACKS. And this, personally, my quilt came in to be, I believe it was somewhere around 14 ounces. I might be off an ounce or so, but depending again on your degree of your sleeping bag, it's going to range a little bit. The average sleeping bag that I saw on the trail was probably somewhere in the 2 to 3 pound range from what others kind of shared with me. So I was at least a pound, if not 2 pounds lighter than what most people were having on the trail. So again, I went with ZPACKS. Now, some other factors that you want to keep in mind. This is down quilt. You can get a synthetic down, so it can get wet. I never had any issues with that, so I just went again. Why I went with ZPACKS. It's not synthetic down, so that's one factor. So depending on again what time you're going, and if you anticipate any time that it could get wet, the only downfall with down is it's not going to keep you warm if the material gets wet. So I didn't have that issue, but anyway, it's something to keep in mind. Some other things are, how well can it compress? If you saw before I took this out, it compresses in a very small sack here, and if you want, you could even get this smaller if you didn't want to go with ZPACKS stuff sack. So really nice, really compressible, and again, hardly any weight. But those are just some things that you want to keep in mind. So anyway, again, average weight in most Thru-Hikers I saw was 2 to 3 pounds. I think that this is probably one of the areas that you'll have to spend some money to really cut down on the weight. You can get a decent sleeping bag in that 2-pound range for probably a decent price, somewhere in that $300, $200-ish, $50 range. Especially if you do research and you get a good deal on Amazon. ZPACKS, I think their quilts are somewhere around $400. So one nice thing about ZPACKS too is Joe will give you basically a warranty for an entire Thru-Hike. So if there's anything ever that goes wrong with that during your hike, pre or whatever, or when you get done, there's something that you didn't like about it, he'll replace it, he'll fix it. They want to make sure that you're happy. So that's another nice thing about the products and having ZPACKS. I will tell you, my goal was to get under 5 pounds on my big 3. When you do a lot of research, you'll hear that a lot, that the big 3 should be somewhere in that 5-pound range. Mine, I think, was about 3.5 pounds, so that really enabled me to be able to get down to the base weight that I was at. But I would say that the average hiker is probably somewhere about double that, close to double that. So again, this area you're going to spend a lot of money, especially when it comes to shelter and the sleeping bag. But you can drop a lot of weight in those areas. There are different things you can do with your stove. I didn't have a stove. I have a stoveless, so I didn't have to worry about carrying that. I didn't have to worry about carrying the fuel. To be honest, it wasn't so much about the weight. It was more about having the time to cook and clean, boil the water, all that junk. And I knew that I probably would only be cooking at night because I didn't want to waste time in the morning. I wasn't going to stop for 45 minutes during the day and have lunch most of the time. So it really was the dinner piece, and I just decided to go stoveless. But a lot of hikers bring Jetboil stoves out on the trail. Jetboil is really heavy. Off the top of my head, I don't know what the ounces are. I'm sure one of my viewers has that, so you can put that in the comments. But you're going to save a lot of weight with going with a lot lighter option. I'll tell you, with the stove, you can get a very lightweight stove. There's pocket rockets out there which are about 3 ounces. I think those are even heavy, but there's a lot of smaller ones that you can get. The one that I have, I honestly can't remember the name of it. I actually got a recommendation from one of my subscribers, and it was like $15, and it weighs like 1 ounce. So just basically screws onto the top of your fuel canister, But you can save a lot of weight in your stove, and you don't need some of those big bulky things like the Jetboil. They're really nice. They burn fast, but you can get something that will still give you some flexibility with a lot less weight. It's going to cut down the burn time just a little bit, but I'll tell you, it's totally worth it. A lot of hikers do alcohol stoves. You can do that. I think the burn time takes even longer to boil water. Probably wouldn't be something that I would personally do, just because I just hate waiting like that. To me, it's not efficient. I'd rather carry an extra ounce. You got compactability, by the way, so that usually the lighter the stove, it's a lot more compact. And the other area that is going to make a big impact is, what are you boiling it in? I went with I think it was a Snow Peak titanium pot. I didn't bring that up with me on the trail, but the setup I do have is a titanium pot. I think it weighs maybe 3 ounces, something like that. But between the stove itself and the pot, you're looking at like 4.5 ounces. So it's hardly anything. And if I were to bring a stove, that's the setup I would have. So next thing, clothing. So there's lots of different options you have here with clothing. Personally, I only brought 2 pairs of clothing. I had my hiking set of clothing. I had my camping set of clothing. I don't think that you need a lot more than that in terms of what you're going to be active in, because basically you need to have 1 dry pair all the time, and then 1 pair that you're obviously going to be hiking in. And what I did is, when I would go into town, I would typically wash the clothes that I was hiking in that smell, and then the camp clothes that I had that I slept in, that were my dry clothes, those became my hiking clothes for the next round. And I just rotated them so that basically every 10 days ish, I would at least wash 1 set of my clothes every single time. But anyway, I had 2 shirts, and I had 2 pants. One pair of shorts, with the zip-offs, and the other one was just a pair of, I think it was a Hurley shorts actually. Other things, you have rain pants. Almost every single thru-hiker that I met sent home their rain pants or complained about rain pants that they never used them. They used them in the very beginning when it was cold and wet out, but once you got into May, there was just almost no need for rain pants. I had a ZPACKS rain kilt. I used it about a half a dozen times. Most of the time when I did use it, I didn't have it on very long. The nice thing about the kilt is you actually have the airflow that comes up so you stay cool. The rain pants, there's just no airflow and it's just really hot. And it's, you know, typically a waste of weight once you get into the spring and later spring season, and it's not as cold out. So most hikers sent their rain pants home, or they wish they would have. Camp shoes, debate. I personally started off without having camp shoes, and then about 400 miles in, I ended up buying a really cheap pair of flip-flops, only because I was just tired of not having something to change into when I got into town. And you know, I wasn't in camp a ton because of how much I hiked, but it was nice to air out my feet. I wanted to prevent any injuries and blisters and things like that, and it was, and also was more of a comfortability. So I did sacrifice the 9 ounces or whatever it is on flip-flops, but I would say it's probably split. More people probably have camp shoes, but it's really your preference. Now, when you are going to some of the hostels, there, I'll tell you, some of the showers I went in were really nasty, and I was really glad that I had flip-flops. Now, that might not bother you. For me, it just, you know, it was just something that gave me, again, more peace of mind, and it was worth the extra 9 ounces. So, again, that can be debatable. Down jacket. Don't send this home. I can't tell you how many hikers that I met that after, as early as Georgia, sent their down jacket home because it was so warm out in the end of April. It was 70-something degrees, and they thought they wouldn't use this, and they weren't even to the Smokies yet. And I would tell you, I think about 7 days later, we got snow on the top of the Smokies. It got down into the low 30s, and I'm pretty sure that they were regretting their mistake. So a few reasons why you never send this home. First of all, get a good down jacket. The one I went with is the Patagonia Ultralight jacket, down jacket. This is like 9 ounces for a medium, and it weighs almost nothing. It'll keep you warm, and you know, you never know when you're going to need this. This is a down jacket. It's not synthetic down, so you're not going to be wearing this when you're sweating. You wouldn't be wearing it when you're sweating anyway, but you'll want it to get wet. But it will, you know, most of the time I use this when I was in camp, or if I stopped hiking and I got cold, throw this on just to warm up, or if I just started my hikes and I wore it for the first quarter of a mile until I started to get warmer and I pulled it off. The other reason why you never bring this home, well, this acts as your pillow. So most of the nice down jackets will have a compartment in their jacket that you basically, and it's just the pocket of the jacket, but you're basically going to stuff the entire jacket in this pocket, and then you zip the pocket back shut, and then it turns into your pillow like this. All right, really comfortable. You don't need a stupid pillow. So we talked about dual purpose. This is one of those dual purpose things. So again, for 9 ounces, you need it. You have to have it. Don't send this home. And you got a really, really comfortable pillow. I use it all the time. First aid. First aid is all over the place. I can't tell you how many things that I saw in hiker boxes that surprised the living heck out of me. For those of you that aren't familiar with hiker boxes, a hiker box is an area that hikers just throw their unwanted stuff. That is basically a free-for-all. So if anybody comes there, you'll see these at hostels. You might see them at some motels and all over the Appalachian Trail. And there's a few things that you can pretty much guarantee that are always going to be in there. One is camp soap. You don't really need soap on the trail. I know it sounds gross, but you know, with how often you're going to sweat and how gross you're going to be, and it's almost impossible to stay clean, and you're going to get used to it. But to be quite honest, the only soap that you really need is sanitizer. You have to have sanitizer. You want to make sure, especially when you get done going to the bathroom, especially that you're using this to keep your hands clean, and that you're not going to get any sickness from that. But sanitizer is really the only soap that I used on the trail. The only exception to that is when I went through New York, there was quite a few places that had free showers, parks and things, beaches. So I actually got like this little bottle of shampoo that I used during that time, just because when I saw them, I just jumped in and had a shower, and it was nice. But don't bring this crap, you don't need it. First aid kits. I'll tell you, this is just an example, but I saw these kind of things all the time. Again, you don't need all of this crap. You're through hiking the Appalachian Trail, but you are literally coming through a trail town or some sort of road intersection all the time. Average is every 4 miles or something like that you'll cross a road. And really, you just got to make it to your next resupply, which is probably 3 to 5 days. So you don't need all of these extravagant things that, in certain scenarios and situations, if you break your leg or break your arm, that you would need, this cast or whatever it might be. It just is, it's not realistic. There are so many hikers out there. So you have the help. You're not going to be alone. And and there's so many spots that you can jump off trail. It's just not necessary. So again, save yourself. Myself, I had a few Band-Aids, some ibuprofen, and I think some antibiotic cream and some athletic tape. So that's all I really needed, to be quite honest. I might have left something out, but you don't need a ton. But you can save some serious weight in your first aid kit. Now, you heard me say athletic tape, duct tape, don't bring it. The mole tape, it's crap. It doesn't stick to your foot. The best thing that you can use on the trail with blister prevention, or when you do get a blister, to cover it, is athletic tape. I use KT tape. It's the best thing you can get out there. It's going to actually stay on your foot until you pull it off, and you won't find anything better than that. Duct tape is really heavy, and it's just not as practical. So athletic tape, that's what it's made for. That's what I would get, and that's what I would get. My number one is probably this guy right here, Bear Spray. These are in hiker boxes everywhere. Man, I probably could have picked them all up and sold them for $20 a piece and probably made, honestly, like $1,500. You don't need bear spray. The bears are way more scared of you than you are ever of them. The only ones you want to be careful are obviously when there are cubs. And I just had a technique that I made sound as I went through the woods with my trekking poles. But this crap you don't need. Save the money and save the extra weight. This weighs, I think, like a pound. Ridiculous. So just some miscellaneous things. So Nalgene bottle. You don't need a Nalgene bottle. A lot of extra weight. Really no purpose outside that a normal water bottle can do, except you probably can put your hot liquids in here. The water bottle of choice by far is Smart Water Bottles. They're the best bottle out there because two reasons. Number one, they're really thin, so they fit well in your pack. It's easy to grab them out. And number two, I love the top. The Smart Water Bottle tops are the best. You click it open and you squirt it. You don't have to finick with something and screwing it off. Nice thing too is most folks are having the SAWYER filter, and I didn't bring the syringe on it because I just used the top of my the top of my Smart Water Bottle to basically unfilter or unclog my SAWYER bottle. So SAWYER filter, excuse me. So you can use the Smart Water Bottle top to unclog your filter as well. So you don't really need to bring the syringe. I never did. Do not get the SAWYER Mini. Every single person except for 2 people that I can recall sent their minis home and bought the bigger one because it clogs all the time. So save. It's going to cost you like an extra ounce and a half. It's totally worth it. So go with the regular SAWYER, not the Mini. Knife. I saw everything. Literally, like a knife like this is over the top. Off the top of my head, this probably weighs like 8 ounces, 9 ounces. I saw tons of utility knives, the multi-tools that have the pliers and all that crap. Again, you don't need all that crap. I literally had this little Swiss Army knife. It weighed maybe 2 ounces, and I only used it to cut my meat and things like that for food. That's all I needed it for. So you don't need a lot of crap. You can save a ton of weight on this stuff. And you know, the other thing I'll tell you is I started off with a GoPro and had some issues with my GoPro when I got up into the Grayson Highlands, got some moisture in it, and I ended up sending it home and using my phone, and it worked out great. So, you know, if I did the trail again, I wouldn't even use a GoPro or any camcorder. I would just use my phone. You're gonna have your phone with you anyway. Again, dual purpose, and especially the iPhone 6 Plus and iPhone 7s have such great quality of video. You don't need anything else, in my personal opinion. So that's what I would go with. So that kind of just wraps up everything. I hope this was helpful for you. Again, you know, many of these things were just things that I saw on the trail, things I experienced. I saw other hikers. You know, I could go into way more detail, but you know, if you stick to these things, these are the biggest things that you can say the biggest weight. But honestly, seriously, get a scale and start weighing everything. You would be surprised how quick these ounces add up. There were items that, you know, I honestly thought, oh, you know, what's this? This is maybe 5 ounces, 6 ounces, and they were 13 ounces, and I had no clue. So you got to weigh it, dial it in, and of course, go out there and test your gear. You got to make sure that it works. I've said that in so many videos, but it's got to work, and it's got to work for you. What works for me might not work for you. I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody has, but again, I hope this was helpful. If it was, go ahead and like the video, and I'll be back sometime, probably later this week, with my next video. All right, guys, Bigfoot out.